Hey y'all, welcome to ADB Football Focus. I'm your host Alvin. I hope you guys are having a terrific day. Just remember to like, share, and subscribe. And if you like today's show and want to comment on something on the show, make sure you leave a comment below. What a wonderful week it was for the UFL. It was an awesome week of games. There was not really a dud this weekend. There were some games that were a little slow, but there were no duds this weekend. So let's just get started with the first one that I'd like to review, and that's Arlington Renegades versus Michigan Panthers. Arlington Renegades barely lost to Michigan 28-27. So, looking at this game, I can break down a lot of things. And the one thing I want to say, I'm going to say it up front. The problem that Arlington has had all year long is this. They shoot themselves in the foot. It's obvious. In this game, Sims gets the kickoff return, right? He even bobbled the ball. When he picked it up, ran down the field, he found a crease. Ran right through the crease, ran all the way to the Renegades' 40-yard line before he was tackled. Got them in field goal range just like that because Jake Bates can hit 60, 65, maybe even 70, 28-27. Arlington led most of the game. Michigan needed one more drive to win. They didn't even have to worry about it. They got that extra. They got that score right there on special teams. Now, there are other times during the games that Arlington shot themselves in the foot. Penalties is an issue for this team. They had 8 for 76. Michigan had 8 for 63. So their penalties were about even, but it was when they happened. Two of them were on field goals. Those were the most obvious. By the way, Jake Bates had another great game. So, he's headed for the NFL. Everybody wants him to play in Detroit, but he probably end up somewhere else. But he might play in Detroit. Who knows? Like I said, penalties hurt Arlington at the wrong time. I believe there was a touchdown that was called back for pass interference, but then, again, it wasn't. There was a couple of other things that happened along the way. And like I said, penalties killed them. But I was also looking at something that is a telltale sign of a problem. Luis Perez doesn't have a very strong arm. And what makes that apparent? You threw 37 passes, completed 24 passes, you have 180 yards. Either that or the receivers are not doing a good job of trying to get open during the once they get the receiving. They have no yards after the catch. That's probably the big thing about that. Most of the receivers, I think you only had one that on the Arlington receivers had like 7 yards after catch, 9, 1. The leading receiver had 1 yard after a catch. So that says a lot. One receiver had 14. And he didn't catch that many passes. He caught one pass. That's a big issue. If you're catching the ball and not getting any yards, any yak, that says a whole lot. Then it also says a lot about how you're passing the ball. I understand that a team like Michigan, they're coming at you, so they're blitzing a lot. And that's another sign that the blitz is working because your quarterback's having to throw short passes, and those short passes are probably underneath the coverage, which then just immediately tackles the wide receiver. And they never got to the end zone. Another look at this is, of course, the rushing game. Now, Arlington did okay. They kind of spread it out. They had 4 different rushers in this game. None of them were the quarterback. Whereas Michigan Panthers, their 2 leading rushers for any other game weren't the quarterback. Danny Etling showed you in this game he was the leading rusher. And he had one long play for 40 yards. They pretty much gave him the leading rushing title. Because the other 2 running backs, Colbert had 24. Hills had 15. Looking at the Arlington side, Smith had 14 carries for 55 yards. Day Hunter had 4 carries for 32. Peyton, I believe, had an end around for 14 yards, and Scott had another for 3 carries for 10 yards. So that was 111 yards altogether. And looking at that, I wish the Michigan Panthers did a better job on their side rushing, but Edling today did enough to win. He was 16 of 28 for 202 yards. He had 1 TD, no interceptions. His rating was 129.5, so a 57% completion rating. Good day for him. But like I said, looking at that comparison to Luis Perez, who, like I said, threw more passes but got less yards, it says a lot about the receiving core and what kind of production they're getting out of the receiving, as well as it may say something about Luis Perez's arm. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. He's accurate, but he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. Defensively, looking at the defense, Michigan was tearing them up. I ain't gonna lie, they sacked the guy once, but they were getting a lot of what we call hits on the quarterback. They were getting in the backfield a lot of times. Again, they were pretty much shutting down a lot of the stuff they were doing. That's harassive. Arlington did a little bit better as far as sacks go. They got 3 on Michigan, but here's the problem with Michigan. Michigan doesn't have the greatest offensive line in the world, and that's obvious. That was obvious today. They did some things to make adjustments. When Eddington started running, it was a good adjustment. Let's put it this way. That adjustment, him alone, slowed down the pass rush a little bit, because now I'm adjusted to the fact that Eddington might take off and run with the ball, even though he wasn't doing very good at that. Sometimes he was holding on to the ball too long. So sometimes, you saw how many passes he got. There was a lot of passes he never got off. He either got sacked or threw a ball away, because he was holding on to the ball too long sometimes during the game. So I was watching that on that side of the ball. Whereas, like I said, Perez was getting the ball off, but most of the time they were very short passes. You see what I'm saying? So that's an issue for that team. That's an issue for both sides of the ball. Both had about the same amount of tackles. Tackles for a loss. That category was even better with the Renegades. As good as Michigan's defense is, that category was better with the Renegades this time. Everything's good about the Renegades except for the fact that they seem to blow it at the end of every game. It's like you got an opportunity to win, and I guess this is just not their year. That's all I can say about that team. It's something to watch. It was something to watch them lose that game. Now, moving on probably to the best or the worst game of the year was the St. Louis Battlehawks versus Houston Roughnecks. What was funny about that game was Battlehawks struggled for a large part of that game. They struggled. There was a huge part of the game where they struggled. Now, we'll say this. A.J. McCarron did pretty good. It's 24-37. Here it is again, 24-37. Now, look at the difference in yards between him and Luis Perez. A.J. McCarron had 24-37 for 255 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he had that one interception at the beginning of the game. It's kind of weird. He threw the ball into double coverage in the end zone. Mistake noted. But he throws the ball a lot anyway. This team is the passing is one of their strong suits. So looking at this game, Houston Roughneck continues to struggle. Sennett Reed was 19 of 34 for 135 yards. Reed Sennett was 19 of 34 for 135 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Like I said, they just continue to struggle. There were a lot of hits on the quarterback in this game. I did watch part of that game. I didn't get to watch the whole game, but I did get to watch part of the game. So there was a lot of hits on the quarterback. St. Louis, Hakeem Butler passed. As far as receiving goes, Hakeem Butler was the man. 6 receptions, 134 yards. That first touchdown said everything. Him and the quarterback were a total mismatch. The cornerback was given decent coverage, but Hakeem Butler just was too tall and too big. He overpowered, got the ball, turned around, was in the end zone. And that pretty much was Hakeem until, he had that one pass, that streak to the end zone that got him the second touchdown. He just dominated the game. You had some other guys that contributed, like Ja'Cour Pearson. He had 5 catches. Jacob Sailors out of the backfield had 5. Then there was Steve Mitchell, number 22, caught some very crucial passes and also another touchdown. So you had a lot of people who actually were doing a decent job in this game. Where they kind of lacked in this game was running. Jacob Sailors only had 8 yards. Wayne Gelman had 10. But they didn't really run that many rushes. They only had 17 rushes in this game. They had 24 receptions, 17 rushes in this game. It was basically all Battlehawks because, once again, as I predicted, score was in the single digits for the Houston Roughnecks. They have no offense. Their defense at times showed up. They got some guys on the defensive side of the ball that are pretty good. I believe they had at least one sack for the Houston Roughnecks. They had two. St. Louis had one. But again, they were getting a lot of hits on Reed Senate. Don't take a look at that way. Plus, they were getting turnovers from fumbles. So they had fumble recoveries. Fumble recoveries are the main thing in the game when you look at those. They recovered 2 fumbles, so the turnovers is the name of the game. Houston Roughnecks, even though they kept St. Louis from scoring pretty much in the first quarter, after that, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't hold them back, So you look at the score, you go, well, it was only 22-8. Yeah, St. Louis struggled to score during the game, but the Houston Roughnecks couldn't score at all. Like I said, they got 8 points. I think they got 6, and then they got 2 at the end of the game when the St. Louis Bauhaus punter wanted to run the timeout. He just ran back to the back of the end zone and ran out of the end zone. That's how they got any points at all. Houston Roughnecks just sucked. Let's just put it that way. They're an awful team. So if I was going to rank them, they are now my dead last team, even with 1 win. They are dead last. They are the worst team out there. I can't say much about St. Louis Bauhaus. They just continue to dominate. I can't wait to see this game against Birmingham Stallions and the Bauhawks. I think I'm going to do an exclusive show, break down some of the statistics for both teams and stuff like that this week. So y'all stay tuned for that. But this game in particular, like I said, it just says a lot. They're awful. About not the Bauhawks, but about the Houston Roughnecks. That says that they're an awful team. They're not good at all. They're terrible. I don't know if there's anything that's a reprieve other than the fact they'll be back next year as a team. That's the only reprieve they have. Meanwhile, Michigan and the Memphis Showboats are having trouble with attendance. So, yeah. Better luck next year, Houston, because y'all are out of it. Now I'm going to move on to this game. We're going to talk about it for a second because we're going to talk about the other bad team in the league that's actually kind of like in the same boat as the Renegades, and that's the Memphis Showboats. They played Birmingham Stallions this weekend. Birmingham Stallions played a decent game. Martinez did what he did. The running game showed up. I'm going to say this. It was a pretty good weekend for the Birmingham Stallions as usual. They scored 39 points. But Memphis put up 21. So they kind of got to that defense. As good as that defense was playing doing, it hit some hits on the quarterback. It was 39-21. Still one of the best defenses in the league. They produced some turnovers. They had an interception. I believe they had a couple of fumbles. So the defense did what it was supposed to do. Let's just put it that way. So Adrian Martinez was 23 of 36 for 368 yards through the air. And I think he gave another 25 yards on the ground. He really didn't get to run him off. Like Memphis found a way to keep him in the pocket. They did a pretty good job of keeping him in the pocket till the end of the game. He had that long run for 14 yards. C.J. Marable was the leading rusher at 5 carries for 31. Ricky Pearson was 11 of 29, 1 TD. He did a wonderful job as well. Receiving wise, you want to look at the receivers here for Birmingham. Of course, Dean Cain did what he does, but he wasn't the leading receiver this time. He had 2 for 45. Kevin Austin, he showed out this week. 4 receptions, 108 yards, 1 TD, 1 very long reception for 80 yards. He had an 80-yard touchdown pass. Marlon Williams also 4 for 58. 2 TDs, 28 yards. C.J. Marable had 4 for 12, 1 TD. So, everybody got their hands on the ball this week. I'm looking at a list here. Total of 23 receptions, 368 yards, 4 TDs. And guess what? I don't think he had an interception. No interceptions. None whatsoever. Now, Memphis had, on the other hand, their quarterback split time. Case Cookers came in 15 and 23, 115 yards, 1 TD. He was taken out of the game. He was just getting beat up. He was getting tore up in the game. Let's be honest. They just did not do a good job at all. They started off rushing the ball okay. Darius Victor had 11 carries for 42 yards. He had his longest was 8 yards. His average didn't say much. Troy Williams also had 2 carries for 11 yards, so it's 5.5. That's the quarterback. Case Cookers had 1 for 4. Hibi Lakio had 1 for 2. But the running backs really didn't do much. There's no TD. They got no TDs. All the receiving TDs came from wide receivers, or came from the quarterbacks to the wide receivers. All I can say about this game was it started off rough for Birmingham. I saw some things that they could do to Birmingham on both sides of the ball. They caught the blitz off guard at time with a 3-step drop, and that's how they got the ball down. And David Davis is still a decent wide receiver. I think that's the best player on the Memphis Showboats team. He's probably going to end up in the league. Their running back could, if he would get some more carries. Darius Victor, I think that's another one that could. Case Cookers, he's been beat up so bad this year. He just does not look like he's ready for the NFL, and they probably wouldn't take him as bad as he got beat up this year. So he's just going to have to keep being a UFL quarterback. Hopefully he'll have a better game next year. David Davis, like I said, was their leading receiver. He did a great job, or as best he could. Never got in the end zone, but he did the best he could against that defense. And I mean, that vaunted defense, like I said early on, those short 3-step drops allowed the quarterbacks to do some damage. I'll say that much. Troy Williams really didn't put up much yards. He was 6 of 13 for 65 yards, 1 TD, 1 interception. But he's a decent backup. Case Cookers, I guess, will be all right, but he got pulled because he wasn't being productive. Even though, looking at these numbers, they weren't that bad. 15 of 20, 115, 1 TD, 65 yards. He just took some big hits in that game. In fact, let me look at the number of sacks here. I believe there were, for Birmingham, 3 sacks. 3 sacks. 2 of those, I believe, were Case Cookers because he got hit pretty doggone hard. And then he was getting hit after every pass. He was just getting tore up. So it was necessary. Memphis Showboats did get to Martinez twice. A mobile quarterback, usually that's where the numbers go down in the sack category because they're going to take off. But they were doing a good job of containing him. So maybe that's something we'll see next week. I don't know. They may try to contain him. Bauhaus may try to contain him. Now, here's the other issue on the other side of the ball. With the way as fast as that defense is, I'll talk more about that later. That's going to be trouble for the Bauhaus because McCarron is not very mobile. The reason he gets hit often in the game is because he can move around the pocket, but he's just not that mobile. Not mobile at all. Again, that game was 39-21. Stallions won. Memphis got a lot of late points that didn't really mean anything. So that's all I want to say about that game. Let's move on to the DC Defenders versus the San Antonio Brahmins. What I saw in this game was something called old-fashioned football. And that was interesting. Old-fashioned football. Wow. Okay, so looking at this game right here, Quentin Darmody, quarterback for San Antonio, had 16 of 26 for 79 yards. 16 of 26 for 79 yards. Let's just put it this way. Passing the ball didn't do anything today. Didn't do anything this weekend at all. It just didn't do anything at all for the San Antonio Brahmins. And that's a low number for especially for the San Antonio Brahmins. 16 of 26, 79 yards, 1 TD, 1 interception. Wow. Teamo was 14 of 22 for 179 yards, 1 TD. Where both teams seemed to accelerate was running the ball. Both teams ran the ball pretty well. Now, John Lovett had 23 carries, 153 yards, no touchdowns. Actually, none of the running backs did. Quentin Darmody added 3 for 30, and Morgan Ellison added another 5 for 17. None of them had touchdowns. The one lone touchdown in this game for San Antonio came from John Lovett, who probably the offensive player of the week. He had 23 carries for 153 yards and caught the one touchdown pass in the end zone. He was 2 for 1 yard as far as receiving goes, and he got 1 TD. Where we have to also look is what was DC doing, because DC won this game 18-12. They love to win close games. When last week the Battlehawks just pulled away from them and they couldn't catch up. But in this game, the defense held them strong and they stayed in the game. You see what they did to Quentin Darmody. I mean, he couldn't. 16-26 for 79 yards. Whew. Maybe the weather was bad. I think it was raining. So that's why you saw the running game go up the way you did. But, I mean, San Antonio really ran the ball this week. DC ran the ball as well. Darius Hogan was 13 of 63. Cameron Harris was 9 of 39. He had 1 TD. Kiki Cortez was 2 of 11. Guess who I don't see a whole lot of rushing from? Jordan Te'amu. He was on 4 for -7. So he didn't really run the ball. He may have taken some hits, like was sacked a couple of times. Rushes. Like I said, receiving-wise, we had one receiver, Kelvin Harmon, which I've said this before. Number 13 is the best wide receiver on the DC Defenders team. Probably the only good wide receiver on the team. He had 8 catches for 101 yards. Everybody else was like Alex Ellis had 2 for 22, right? So he's a decent receiver. It just, like I said, for some reason, Kevin Harmon is the only dude on that team, and that's hurting Te'amu. He doesn't really have anybody to throw to. He has a tight end, Caden Smith. He caught 1 for 3. And he didn't really do much. So it's like you don't have anybody. What do you do when you don't have anybody? You tried to run the ball better this week. Darius Higgins, like I said, had 13 for 63. So you tried to run the ball a little bit better. You tried to spread the ball around on the ground so he could get open to throw the passes he did pass. That 1 touchdown got him enough. They had 2 touchdowns as compared to San Antonio's 1 touchdown. And like I said, looking at Quentin Darmody struggling, that's probably the main reason why San Antonio lost this game. So it's 18-12. DC played great defense. That's what they do. They did enough to win, even though they couldn't stop the run. San Antonio could not score more than 1 time. So DC Defenders win. They need to improve drastically. So right now, we're looking at the standings for these teams. Of course, I need to do that breakdown, so I'm going to go ahead and break that down for you standing-wise. So, I'm going to give my fearless rankings. Of course, already clinched their playoff spot, so their number 1 is the Stallions. They're 6-0. They win 1 more game, they're good. 2 more games, they're good. 3 more games, they already going to have home field advantage on that side of the game. The closest team to them is Michigan. And they almost screwed it up and lost this week. So that says a lot about the USFL division. But if we look at it overall, Birmingham is number 1. Number 2, Battlehawks. Battlehawks are doing great. The test for both teams, Birmingham and the Battlehawks, will come this week in Birmingham. And now number 3 gets a little shaky. I still think it's San Antonio, regardless of this game. I think San Antonio is the number 3 team. DC still got a lot of work to do. They did enough to win this game. They were the home crowd game, and I think that's how they won this game. So DC is number 4. Number 5 isn't quite as clear, but it's gonna have to be the Michigan Panthers. Okay, Michigan Panthers are sitting at number 5. They almost lost to the Renegades, but a lot of people have almost lost to the Renegades, so that's nothing new. The Renegades are just about this close to being good enough. So the bottom feeders, we're going to start with Memphis. Memphis is ranked the highest among the 3 bottom teams. They've lost. They won 1 game at the beginning of the season, but they've been close in some games. They played pretty good here and there. They just can't get over the hump. I do believe they're going to get another win somewhere down the road. Maybe 2 more wins. If they can get the offensive line problem. They got the most hit quarterbacks in the league. Those quarterbacks have been sacked so much. I'm surprised Case Cook is... If he don't come out here and have to, I ain't trying to be funny, but you don't want an off season where you don't remember the entire season at all. And that's possible. Case Cookers will not remember his whole year playing UFL because he's been hit so much. So, it's important that they get that fixed. Another team is Michigan's offensive line is terrible. But they're number 5, so Number 6 is the Memphis Showboats. Number 7 I'm going to give to the Renegades. Because even though they have not won again, they are the exact opposite of Birmingham, have not won a game this year. The one thing about them is they can put up some numbers. They can play defense, they can play offense. They just got some reason they have a mental incapability of winning a game. It's mental. It's all mental. How do you miss a lane on a kickoff and let a guy run all the way? It's mental issues. How do you, and I watched this in another game, how do you have a pass interference knowing that by having that pass interference close to the end zone, it's going to bring the ball in? Do it twice in a game. It leads to a touchdown that wins the game for the other team or a field goal for the other team. This happened twice with the Renegades. So the Renegades' problem is mental, not physical or capable team. They have some very talented players, but they're just can't get over the mental hump. And I don't know what will get them over that. Fumbles at the wrong time, interceptions at the wrong time, all those things. I don't know what will get them over the hump. Let's turn to the dead last team. Houston Roughnecks. Dumpster fire, decent quarterback, can't get in the end zone. They have mental problems. They have some bad players on the team, a lot of injuries. The team is just a wreck. It's a fireball wreck. Maybe next year they'll be better. They might not even have the same coach next year, but they've got a huge amount of improvement to work on. So Houston is dead last. I don't see them winning not another game this year because everybody's fighting for their playoffs life. Everybody else that's left on the list is fighting for the playoffs life except for the Renegades and Houston. They're the only two teams who are out. You know, at this point, the Renegades done lost 6 games. The best they can do is win 4 and go home. Like I mean 4 and go home. Houston's won 1, so they have a chance still to be positive. They got 4 more games, so they go 5 and 6, or 4 and or they have a chance. Let's just put it this way: they have a chance if they can improve, but they're not going to improve. Houston's just going to stay at the bottom. They're done. They're cooked. So I did want to say something. I don't think Memphis in Michigan had great attendance numbers this week. I think Michigan was a little bit better. I was watching the stands. They looked like they had fans on both sides. Memphis, on the other hand, it just tanked. I mean, you could hear more Birmingham fans in the stand in Memphis, which was awesome because we traveled. And part of the problem with the league is, so Birmingham is 8 hours from St. Louis. It's like 14 hours from D.C., so it's a long travel. You know, St. Louis fans can travel to D.C., and D.C. can travel to St. Louis. Michigan's closer to those 3, right? Even us, it's like a 10-hour, 12-hour trip to Michigan. Houston's 10 hours away. San Antonio's 18 hours away, something like 12, 13, 14 hours away. That's a long trip. But the Memphis and Birmingham are the closest one. We're 4 hours apart. Now, if New Orleans comes along, that'll be another one that we can go the road on. So some of that about people saying, well, we can't get fans in the stand. Well, I can get all the home crowd in the stand. I can't necessarily get all the visiting teams here in the stand. You see what I'm saying? It's distance of teams. These teams have great distance. This league is new. It's hard to get fans to travel. As time goes on, that'll probably change. If we get build up and get more fans and more people involved in the UFL, they will travel. But that's something else I forgot to leave out of my theory when I was talking about this, when I previewed these games, and they were talking about these teams that might end up leaving. I said the problem is distance, travel. Like I said, St. Louis to Detroit is closer than Birmingham to Detroit. And D.C., all those guys are in the same range. For us, the closest game, again, is Memphis. San Antonio, Houston is a long way away. And then San Antonio's clearly on the other side of Texas, almost on the other side of Texas. So it's like these are long trips. Unless you're going to fly and you got the money to fly all the time, that's cool. Frequent flyer miles help pay for that. But like I said, those are long distance games. So, like I said, that's one thing about the league. But Memphis, like I said, they're suffering. Hopefully, the team decides, hey, look, we just cut our losses this year. Next year, We'll keep the showboats around because everybody's talking about they're supposed to go to 10 teams next year because they this mandated. So if New Orleans gets a team, that's another close thing. I'm thinking a thing that would help. This is just me, that we need to make conferences more regional, because it's fine if Detroit's over here and then we got Birmingham, Memphis, New Orleans, and Houston. That's fine. For right now, that's fine. But as time goes on, you're going to need to change. You need to at least put 2 teams close enough to each other, because if they're bringing in Seattle, there you go. Another long trip across the country. But they're going to have a decent crowd in Seattle. They like football there. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the league and how it's going to transform and move around and change over time. It's doing a great job right now. I have no problem with how the league is doing. Like I said, this weekend slated games was great. TV numbers look pretty good. Let's continue to do and make progress like we're doing. Just enjoy the league, guys. Just be the greatest fans in the world, like me. Just be an awesome fan. Enjoy the UFL football, and y'all have a terrific day.